You're listening to Inside Israel Today with Gil Hoffman on the Land of Israel Network.
Hello and welcome to Inside Israel Today on the Land of Israel Network on thelandofisrael.com, where we are in the middle of the most confusing and strange political crisis Israel has possibly ever had. Now, we went to elections on April 9th. The Prime Minister won a convincing victory. He had 6 weeks to form a government. It ends on Wednesday. I'm taping this on Tuesday, and we have absolutely no idea whether he will succeed. You are probably listening to this on Wednesday. Maybe a solution has been reached by now, and you are all smarter than me. Or maybe when you're listening to this, you're hoping that I tape this when I know what's going on. I'm sorry, I don't. No one does at the moment. I want to take you back to another odd political crisis. I had just came back from a speaking tour in May of 2012, and I thought, this is a good time to go to the Knesset. After all, the Knesset was voting to disperse itself and to initiate an election. And so I went straight from the airport to the Knesset at 10 o'clock at night. And sure enough, a couple hours later, people start asking, where is Shaul Mofaz, the leader of the opposition? And it turned out that he was at Netanyahu's house, building the largest coalition that Israel had had in 28 years. Behind everyone's back, when the Knesset members were voting to disperse itself, really, a government was being built. And I'm glad that I happened to be there that night, where everything changed in the middle of the night. And I was the only one who was well rested, because I sleep well on planes. And for everybody else, it was the middle of the night. But for me, with jet lag and everything, it was no big deal at all. And poor Lahav, who had been covering, while I was on the speaking tour, the Knesset as it was working on disbanding itself for a couple weeks and finally could relax and go to bed, went to sleep thinking that there would be an election, and woke up thinking all the work she did the previous 2 weeks were all irrelevant and down the drain. And Gil comes back, gets off a plane, and he's there for all the history and all the action as it happens in the middle of the night. Well, it feels like a little deja vu, because right now at the Knesset members are going through all kinds of processes to initiate an early election, a repeat election, while it's clear that things are happening not at the Knesset in order to prevent that from happening. For instance, right now as we speak, there's a meeting going on between Avigdor Lieberman and one of the most important ultra-Orthodox operatives in the world. His name is Yankee Kanievsky. Okay, Yankee Kanievsky is responsible for Moshe Leon getting pretty much all the votes that he got in the first round of voting for mayor of Jerusalem, which was what allowed him to make the second round, the runoff for mayor of Jerusalem, where he defeated Ofer Berkovich. So the power of Yankee, who is the grandson of the spiritual mentor of the Degel HaTorah party, cannot be underestimated. And the very fact that Lieberman has agreed to meet with him after he hasn't even had a serious meeting with the Prime Minister of Israel in way too long shows that maybe in the end there will be a compromise reached. Where there's a will, there's a way. And right now there are just too many interests in not going to elections. There is the interest of the public, who would save, according to a finance ministry official, 475 million shekels, plus the other they talk about 5 billion shekels that if they have a day off from work in this country. I think that some of that is recouped by the spending that there is on a day off from work. We're talking tons and tons of money. All the money that would go to the same political strategists that worked before, some of whom live abroad. All the money that goes in campaign fundraising that is given to the various parties. And then all we do is come back with likely a very similar Knesset, maybe with the bottom people in Likud falling off the list, because Likud, as we speak, has a meeting where they are apparently merging with the Kulanu party of Moshe Kachlon. But then again, I'm taping this at 4 o'clock on Tuesday, and you're listening to this on Wednesday. And between now and then, anything can happen. Now, somebody asked me, has this ever happened before in Israel? Didn't something similar happen with Tzipi Livni? No. After Ehud Olmert quit, because of his corruption charges, at a stage that Netanyahu passed a year and a half ago, where the police were recommending charges against him, then the president gave his number two in the party, Tzipi Livni, a chance to form a government. And she failed because the ultra-Orthodox made demands that she wasn't willing to give in to, and she decided to initiate an election instead, and that election was won by Netanyahu, sort of. She still got one more seat than Likud, but the Likud's bloc was much larger, and President Shimon Peres at the time, even though he came from the party of Tzipi Livni and did not like Netanyahu, had no choice but to ask Netanyahu to form a government. That's the closest it's come. There also was what was called the stinking maneuver, where in 1990, Shimon Peres thought he had successfully formed a coalition to break up the national unity government that he had with the Likud's Yitzhak Shamir. But then there were a couple ultra-Orthodox Knesset members who disappeared all of a sudden and weren't there to vote for him. One was hiding in a cave, ladies and gentlemen, literally hiding in a cave. And that was why Peres could not form his government. And in the end, Shamir ended up forming one without him. Nope, nothing close to what we have now of a candidate winning an election and then not succeeding in forming a government during the 6 weeks allotted to him by law. So where is there a precedent? Well, in Britain. According to the Israel Democracy Institute, in Britain, in 1974, 2 elections were held in February and October. In Ireland, in 1982, 2 elections were held in February and November. In Greece, in 1989, 2 elections were held in June and November. In Greece in 2012, 2 elections were held in May and June. Poor Greeks. And in Spain, elections were held in December 2015 and another election in June 2016. So it does happen around the world, ladies and gentlemen. Now, a lot of people are asking, why doesn't Netanyahu form a coalition with the 60 Knesset members that he has? And the answer is that he won't be able to accomplish anything if he did. There would have to, if there are 60 might be okay if you have Knesset members on the other side who are abstaining, but right now it would be 60 versus 60. And that's not going to work. So also that Netanyahu wants to change basic laws in this country. The bills that are the forerunner to a constitution that may never get written. Those bills require 61 Knesset members out of 120 to pass. There are minority governments around the world, or have been, that are common in democracies such as Canada, Denmark, Sweden, and Spain. Says the Israel Democracy Institute, today minority governments are serving in Ireland, in the United Kingdom, Denmark, Norway, Spain, and Sweden. But we've only had a minority government in Israel after parties have fallen out of the government. For instance, in Yitzhak Rabin's government after Shas left the government. In Ehud Barak's government after Meretz quit the government. So, never have we had a minority government formed at the beginning. It's certainly not what any prime minister would want to do. And so what we have, ladies and gentlemen, is a mess. And it's up to the politicians to forego their egos on behalf of the people and avoid that mess. And if they do, then sometime by Wednesday night, Netanyahu would tell the president that he has succeeded in forming a government. All he has to do is send that message to him. He has by Monday night to submit the coalition agreements that would be voted on by next Wednesday. And then he can actually start governing. Then he can work on passing bills, on diplomacy. There's a conference in Bahrain on the 25th of June coming up, where the Trump plan will begin to be implemented with this conference that will focus on improving the benefits for the Palestinians. And there would then be an attempt to implement this Trump plan, which would perhaps be unveiled shortly around that time. If we go to an election, then there isn't going to be a Trump plan, perhaps, because Israel will be busy until the election would be held on the 17th of September. And then the American elections are heating up around then. And that's when the White House really focuses on its own internal issues. Now, there is still a small, very small chance that somebody else could form a government. Let's say that Netanyahu fails to build a coalition, and he also fails to pass a bill initiating an election. Well, then time will run out, and then the ball will be given back to the president, who can then have consultations on who can form a government. Now, earlier on, he concluded that Netanyahu was the only person who could form a government, not Benny Gantz, the leader of the Blue and White Party. But things have a habit of changing. If Netanyahu can't form a government, and if some members of Knesset from his Likud who don't want to lose their jobs end up betraying the Likud at the last minute, and not joining the effort to disperse the Knesset, if they decide to stick around, maybe you'll have enough Knesset members from Likud who would be willing to join Benny Gantz and his Blue and White Party, along with Kulanu, even if it's merging somehow with Likud today, even with Lieberman, and maybe an ultra-Orthodox party, Shas, even though there's not a lot of good relations between Shas and Yair Lapid, number 2 in Blue and White, and then maybe they could somehow form a government led by Blue and White. It is not easy, but it is a technical possibility. Still, the most likely scenario is that Netanyahu is our prime minister, will be our prime minister, and perhaps forever will be our prime minister. One never knows. I'm going to be talking more about what's going on here after the break. Hello, I'm Gil Hoffman, host of Inside Israel Today, and I'm honored to be taking part in the Shavuot of a lifetime at the Mount Zion Hotel. Come join yours truly and other show hosts here, such as Ari Abramowitz, Jeremy Gimpel, Eve Harrow, Yishai Fleischer, talking about Torah and inspiration. What will I be talking about? You'll just have to come out to the Mount Zion Hotel.
Shavuot of a lifetime, Thursday through Monday, June 6th through 10th, 2019. For more information, visit thelandofisrael.travel. That's thelandofisrael.travel.
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen, here on Inside Israel Today on the Land of Israel Network, on thelandofisrael.com, where we call ourselves a radio station sometimes, and not just a podcast. Perhaps it's the vestige of the Voice of Israel radio network. May God bless its memory. That was sort of a radio station, even though it was online. And one of the detriments to us not really being a radio station is that I don't have callers calling me in right now to ask questions. I would love to take questions from callers. Right now, though, I have a caller who's a producer sitting next to me over here, and he's been asking very good questions. So first of all, he asked, are Naftali Bennett and Ayelet Shaked still ministers? The answer is absolutely yes. If we go to an election, they will continue to be ministers until new ministers are sworn in. If we go to an election on September 17th, there's going to be 6 weeks for somebody to form a government, which is taking us to the very end of October. And that means that the minister of education who will be greeting students as they arrive for the first day of school will be Naftali Bennett. And Ayelet Shaked will still be there trying to change the judicial system and reform it. And she'll still be the minister who heads the Ministerial Committee on Legislation, pretty much decides what bills pass. And Michael Oren has not been a member of Knesset since he left, but he is still technically the deputy minister in the Prime Minister's office in charge of international diplomacy, even though he quit his Kulanu party, even though he doesn't even have a party. And neither does Ayelet Shaked right now. So that is still very much in the open. The caller sitting next to me asks about the number of ministers allowed. Well, yesterday, Monday, the cabinet was supposed to bring to the Knesset a vote on expanding the cabinet. There's a bill that would negate the previous bill that limited the number of ministers to 18. Last time, the last government in 2015, they passed what was called in Hebrew a hora'at sha'ah, a temporary change just for one term that allowed there to be more ministers. And now this bill, which is ready for its final readings to pass it into law, would allow Netanyahu basically to appoint as many ministers as he wants. Not just 18, not just the 26 that were the most likely. He can appoint a Google ministers. That's right, Google is still the largest number and not just a website that makes a lot of money. So Netanyahu needs to change the law in order to appoint 26 ministers by next Wednesday, and it is still very much doable if elections are not happening. But yesterday they did not pass this bill because they were too busy working on dispersing the Knesset. Now, I feel so bad for some of these Knesset members who just got elected, especially the ones in Likud. You've got people there that they just got elected. They now are voting to lose their own jobs. Some of them left good jobs in order to run for Knesset. There's a woman named Osnat Mark who joined the previous Knesset at the last minute and barely got to do anything. And then we went to elections. And then she got reelected, and she's in the new Knesset and hasn't gotten to do anything yet other than vote for her own job to be lost. And now she sees Netanyahu make a deal with Kachlon that could give up her seat in the Knesset in favor of one of the Knesset members in Kulanu. She was quoted saying outside this meeting where the merger was supposed to be taking place, "Why should I give up my seat for Yifat Shasha Biton?" Who is she anyway? Who is Yifat Shasha Biton? Yifat Shasha Biton is our Minister of Housing, ladies and gentlemen. What do you mean you don't know who she is? Oh, snot, Mark. She is a minister who was raised in Kiryat Shmona and is the top woman left in the Kulanu party. Is a very impressive person. She got the housing ministry job when Yoav Gallant defected from Kulanu to Likud, where he was then given the job of immigrant absorption minister in place of Sofa Landver, who was fired when Yisrael Beitenu left the government. Does Osnat not read the paper? Doesn't remember all these exciting developments that have taken place in Israeli politics and not know Yifat Shasha Biton? So I think if I'm the Knesset, if I'm the Likud, I would perhaps draw up a new list that has in it all the Knesset members in Likud right now, plus the ones from Kulanu. There are only 4 anyway from Kulanu. Just take out Osnat Mark, because Osnat Mark is a bad luck charm. Every time she is there, the elections are initiated. Apparently, the Knesset cannot tolerate having Osnat Mark in its midst. Now, we're also going to wait and see. Is there going to be any tension inside the Blue and White Party? After all, they made it through 1 election, and can they make it through 2? In their party, they have a rotation for prime minister. That means the first 2.5 years were supposed to be Benny Gantz as prime minister, and the final 2 years were supposed to be Yair Lapid. I started causing trouble there, asking Knesset members, Gantz needs to move out of the way of Lapid now. A rotation is a rotation is a rotation. It's Lapid's turn. And I don't expect them to make any changes in the end. Then again, could very well not be an election anyway, which makes all kinds of questions redundant. And where will there be an election? There will be an election, ladies and gentlemen, for leader of the Labour Party. That's right. The Labour Party, which has had 8 elections for leader of the party since 2001, hasn't had an election since July of 2017. Come on now. You've let Avi Gabay lead this party now for almost 2 years. He led the party to 6 seats in the Knesset, by far the least that the Labour Party ever got. Only a quarter of the votes that they got in 24 when they ran together with Tzipi Livni, just 2015. And after Gabay won only 6 seats, the honorable thing to do would have been to quit. He did not quit. He is still there. And he has not said firmly that he's not running again for leader of the Labour Party. If they move up elections, then maybe he'd have even more reason to stay because nobody else would be ready. Then again, if I'm the Labour Party, I would take somebody new that nobody knows anything about. You've got a former IDF deputy chief of staff named Yair Golan who intends to run. The number 2 guy in Labour, Itzik Shmuley, or was number 2 because they saved the seat for another former general, Tal Russo, and then Shmuley, who won the number 2 seat, was moved to number 3 on the list. He got a huge number of votes in the primary, Shmuley. He is definitely popular within the Labour Party, and we'll see how popular he is in the general public. He's seen as a socioeconomic activist who is a very good worker in the parliament. Passed a lot of bills, even though he was in the opposition, that help ordinary people who are from disadvantaged sectors. Maybe he will become the leader of the Labour Party. You never know. Or maybe there'll be somebody who sweeps the party off their feet, who I haven't even heard of yet. You never know. So, look, we don't know as we're sitting here whether there's going to be an election for Prime Minister and for the Knesset. We don't know if the Blue and White Party is going to stay together. We know that the Labour Party will always fight and always self-destruct. That is the one thing I know as I'm sitting here taping this wonderful show Inside Israel today. Perhaps Inside Israel tomorrow. We'll all know a lot more. Thank you for being with us, and I'm looking forward to being with you again next week when we will all be so much wiser. Please, God. Bye-bye.
Have you ever had Shavuot in Yerushalayim? Or has it been many years since you've had Shavuot in Yerushalayim? Forget everything. If you can, if you have the means, book a ticket. Come to Jerusalem for Shavuot. It's so worth it. It's so powerful. And we're calling it the Shavuot of a lifetime. You won't regret it if this is the one. Come out for an awesome Shavuot together. Check out the website, thelandofisrael.travel.